Jamaicans will be heading to the polls on September 3rd as 139 politicians vie for 63 seats in the parliament, 6 of which are marginal. The ruling Jamaica Labour Party and opposition People's National Party filed nomination papers for all seats. There are also 13 independent candidates, according to the Electoral Commission. Now, both Prime Minister Andrew Holness and opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips have expressed confidence in winning the election. Holness led the JLP to a 32-31 victory in the 2016 general election, and then he gained 2 more seats after by-elections in 2017 and 2019. So this is Jamaica's 18th general election since universal adult suffrage in 1944. Some 1,913,000 people are eligible to vote. It might just be up to 6 marginal seats. So joining us to discuss this is political analyst, also a commentator. I heard Kevin O'Brien Chang. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, my first question to you, the Bank of Jamaica revised its forecast for the country's economy, and noting that it is expected to contract between some 7 and 10%. I mean, with this new revelation, what sort of impact, if any, do you think it will have on this election?
Well, Jamaica is one of the most tourist-dependent countries in the world. And in fact, I think some surveys say we might be the hardest hit because tourism is dead. No cruise ships, no nothing. And it doesn't look like it's coming back this winter. So the big story in this election is going to be a cold, dark winter, figuratively speaking. Who is the best leader to guide us through these rough, rocky seas and bring us safely home to shore? That will be the main question.
And the Jamaican dollar, in fact, depreciated since the first COVID-19 case in March. It's now like 150 to $1 US, and previously it was around 135. What sort of challenges does this pose for the new government?
Well, the dollar is trending where it should be. If you look at the inflationary differential with the US, it's pretty thin. There's nothing out of the ordinary. Politicians will exaggerate it, but listen, I came back to Jamaica in 18 and the dollar was 5 to 1, and it's 150 now. So these minor movements are no big deal.
Wow. Now, in your estimation, I mean, we are in a pandemic. How has the government managed to treat with the issue and control it? And earlier I saw the UK, I think it was last week, flagged Jamaica as a risky travel destination, and citizens have accused the JLP of putting people's lives at risk with the reopening of borders. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Prime Minister was getting great ratings before the election was called. We're averaging like 20 a day or less. Since the election last week, it's been 100 a day. Yesterday, we had the biggest ever, 240, double the previous high of 120. All that in context. Jamaica is one of the lowest infection rates in the world, one of the lowest death rates. We're at 6 per million, you know? So it is impacting, and naturally there's a surge. The outside countries are going to say, hold off, you know? But the logic is, and get it out of the way, because as people rightly say, if not now for the election, when? Suppose COVID gets worse. It's due by next year, March, and 3 months after that, and democracy is sacred, you know? So you don't want to have to go past your due dates. So people are generally feeling it, get it out of the way, because if not now, when? That's the reality of it. And the opening, that's a big misconception. We've opened the borders, but we've had no problems with tourists. We haven't had any cases of tourists testing positive. It's returning Jamaicans. Because a lot of Jamaicans live abroad. And one of the things they love to do is I don't know what they love to do. Funerals are a big thing in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Everybody from the family from abroad comes. And it's the returning Jamaicans who have been irresponsible, and they're supposed to quarantine, stay home, and they have not been doing it. And so the opening of the borders, yes, they have been a problem, but it's not the foreign tourists, it's returning resident Jamaicans and Jamaicans ourselves. The great Usain Bolt, the greatest sprinter of all time, a legend. And he had a party the Saturday with, I don't know, hundreds of people there, celebrities like Leon Bailey and Raheem Sterling, international footballers were there. And next day he tested positive. So he was positive at the party, giving people, And you think a rich, famous guy like that would have a sense of responsibility, but there you go.
Yeah, I think there's a sense
young
of,
hormones.
yeah, continue.
It's young hormones. What are you going to say? The government is having a battle. They have put measures in place. They've left up to a lot of trust. And if there's a criticism of the prime minister, people would say he's been a little soft. But then again, his argument is, he said, I have to balance. I have to balance the health safety. I have to balance the economy, because if we shut down, the economy goes down. And then the mental health. Jamaicans, well, you know, Latin American, Jamaica, West Indian, Jamaica, they love to party. And the upsurge now is being directly linked our independence celebrations, Independence Day and Emancipation Day.
Independence, emancipation, yeah.
Right? And the feeling is that some are saying the Prime Minister should shut down that period. Some said, we need to enjoy ourselves. And the reality is, if you had a shutdown and no infections now, people would say, you see, you're stifling us. So in other words, it's like we had to get a spike for people to take it seriously. Unfortunately, that's how it is. But fingers crossed, it is still low by world standards, but getting higher each day. And the election has been directly impacted. Jamaica has one of these vibrant democracies. They have huge rallies, music, people dancing, singing. They had a bit on nomination day, even though they limited the people when they nominate the candidates. You know, people celebrate. But the government saw the crowds and then shut it down. No more rallies. So we've had a very quiet campaign. No rallies, no celebrations. It's gone on social media, essentially.
Yeah, and they limited the amount of people that were supposed to be part of campaigns as well.
Well, of course, that they've limited it, you know, and again, the thing is, they said rules, are they being followed? So it's affected the election in a way where it's a different kind of election we're having. And people wonder about the turnout. People said, will people turn out to vote, especially the older people? Now, Trinidad is a sister country to us. It's a culturally similar. They had a recent election, and their turnout is about 10% down.
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe it might be the same thing in Jamaica, but who knows? It's speculation right now.
I mean, you saw a lot of long lines, and I think people were discouraged perhaps by that. And maybe you might see something similar, because Jamaica is a much bigger country in comparison. I mean, what do you think?
They just had one more thing. They just announced today. COVID, people who have COVID positive can vote, but it's time between 4 and 5 o'clock. It's their constitutional right. So they've set up a period. The voting hours are 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So they've blocked out 4 to 5 for COVID positive patients.
But how do they ensure, I mean, are there protocols that will be implemented in terms of like having to stick your finger in the ink?
Well, I am sure, I haven't read the details, but I'm pretty sure that they are halfway with all the precautions that have been taken. But again, it's a constitutional right, and you'd have a big, you know, people said, look, hey, we're still a pandemic, but the rule of law still has to prevail.
What are citizens' main concerns going into this election? I know employment as well as crime would be chiefly among them.
Well, crime is always a big problem. Unfortunately, one of the highest murder rates in the world. But sadly, both parties keep kicking the can down the road, as they say. Neither of them want to deal with the real issues, which stem with education. We have a political system, which is pretty good, but you have some intimidation elements there, garrisons they call them, but they don't want to deal with them. So it's a trade-off. Neither of them have done a good job. So while it's the biggest concern, neither has any advantage. The big issue really is COVID. Not only the direct health impact, how many people, you know, we had low deaths so far, 6 per million, one of the lowest in the world, but might get higher. But the aftermath, when COVID goes away, the economy is going to be in tatters. And this government was doing quite well, actually. They have created 100,000 jobs. It's the lowest unemployment rate ever, pre-COVID. Poverty had declined by 40% from the last time. You know, it's down to the lowest in 10 years. They built a lot of roads, built a lot of houses, and a lot of water has been fixed. So they have done a lot of infrastructure work. They're riding high, they're well ahead in the polls.
Yeah.
But after COVID, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the big thing. It's like, who is going to, like you're on a very rough seas in a boat. Who do you want? Which captain do you want at the tiller to get us back safe to the land?
I mean, I looked at the clash of sorts, the debate, leadership debate between Andrew Holness and Dr. Peter Phillips, and for me, it was a bit hard to differentiate who from whom, because I felt like their philosophies on crime, COVID-19, economics, etc., was more or less the same. What will be the deciding factors for Jamaicans? Because one thing I noticed was that Andrew Holness made sure to call Dr. Phillips Papa Tax, if I'm not mistaken. So he sort of alluded to the fact that under that government, the country would create a lot of taxes. So I mean, what would be the deciding factor for Jamaicans?
The deciding factor, management. As you say, there's very little ideology divide right now. They're both market economy countries. Even though the PNP still call themselves socialists from the 1970s, it's still a nickname, but it's just a name now. So it's going to boil down to management. Dr. Phillips, to be fair to him, we had a great global recession in 2008. Jamaica got hit very hard, and a lot of the rebuilding, and he helped with a lot of the rebuilding, and he had put a lot of taxes on, called it Papa Tax. And this government boasts that it's able to, three straight campaigns or budgets, it has been able to increase infrastructure spending without adding any new taxes. So that is why he was jibing him. But it's going to boil down to management. They really can't do anything drastically different, each of them. But it's going to find out who is the better manager, who can get the nuts and bolts right, who has the better team. So it's a management election, essentially.
Yeah, because I mean, on August 27th, there was the debate between Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark and then the Shadow Minister of Finance, Mark Golding. And what I felt like I saw was that Dr. Clark sort of focused on governmental reform, while Mr. Golding, he spoke about social benefits more so. And do you feel like Jamaicans are looking forward to the idea of that, coming out of a pandemic and seeing tourism completely crashing in this crisis? Are they really looking towards these sort of social benefits?
That's a big question. They did, at the beginning of the COVID, the government did give grants to people. They gave, I forget the amount, 50,000 or something, not much, but still, it's something new for Jamaicans to get money during a pandemic. But the government has been boasting for the 3, 4, 5 years about the macroeconomic stability. They've gotten things stable. The dollar has been rising, but in appropriate amounts, not dramatically. Inflation has been very low. And you heard about the IMF miracle. There's been a big talk about how Jamaica managed to get our debt from 150% GDP, debt to GDP, to below 100%. We've done very well. But COVID has changed the equation completely. Will they have to do some deficit financing? They don't have to borrowing again. That's a big question. Will we have been through the borrow and spend.
Yeah.
We have been through borrow and spend and getting the debt, and it's good in the first year or so. 2 years, and then you have 10 years of misery. We've been there before. But when people get hungry, and sometimes they say, look, I don't care about the long term or short term. I need some food now in my belly. So that's going to be a big question going down the road. And as I say, it's going to be who's going to be able to manage the economic fallout of COVID. That's perhaps the biggest question. And Dr. Clark is widely considered the best technical finance minister we've ever had. A PhD from Oxford. Although Mark Golding, interesting, has a degree from Oxford also. But Dr. Clark is widely regarded as a very technical guy. He knows his numbers. He has got his numbers correct, and that's built up a lot of trust in that aspect of, hey, we can trust him to get his numbers right. And that's one advantage the JP has.
On that note, we will take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue our discussion on Jamaica's upcoming election with political analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang. Stay with us. Welcome back. We continue our discussion with political analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang on Jamaica's upcoming election set for September 3rd. So earlier we were discussing the candidates that were contributed by both parties for this upcoming election. And as you said, it was the largest number of females being offered for the political landscape. Tell us about that.
Yes, the largest number of female candidates and the largest number of 45 and under candidates, which is young by political standards. Our Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, he became Prime Minister in 2011 at 39, the youngest ever. He got voted out, but he got voted back in 2016. He was 44 then. Even at 48 now, he's one of the youngest leaders in the world. Most of the world leaders are in their 60s. So he's a young guy, and he's bringing in a lot of younger people and younger women. And so we have 18, the JLP and PNP are the two main parties. Sadly, people like me would like to see some other parties in Parliament, but there's never been. Every seat, parliamentary seat in selection is PNP or JLP. So it's a duopoly. 18 women for the JLP, 12 for the PNP, the most ever female candidates. And we have 20 JLP under 45 and under, and 17 PNP. And for women, 45 and under, we have 9 JLP and 5 PNP, the most ever, 14. So we're seeing, and a lot of them have a chance of winning. It's not just to put them into, just tokenism. There's a good chance that the world 24% average for parliamentarians, for females, that's the world average. In other words, the world average of parliamentarians is 24%. There's a good chance we could pass it. We have 11 now. 10 and one lady died 11, so we're below that average. We could end up with possibly maybe like 17, which would be above the world average. It is, in fact, it is a possibility that this could be a generational and gender, not revolution, but realignment in this election. We could see a lot more.
That's a gender parity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not parity. Well, the 30%. You look at, as I said, if you get above the world average, you're doing well. We're doing well. So there's and young woman. I keep coming back to the young woman. We have 14. I think the last parliament, you had one lady 45 and under, Lisa Hanna, or Miss World Beauty Queen. Mm-hmm. And we have 14 now, and we could end up with as much as 7. It's a possibility. So you could see that going from 1 to 7. So the thing about Jamaica too, we're one of the biggest gender disparities education-wise in the world. 70 to 80% of our tertiary graduates are female.
Yeah.
And if eventually that has to feed into the political system and the business system. So you might see the beginnings of that, where the young women are so doing the young men, and they start going into politics, and they have a more yin and yang balance. I'm a believer, yin and yang, male and female. And so I'm a believer, the more women who can get into parliament, the better. Forget the parties. This election, I'm rooting for the women.
We've sort of seen Prime Minister Andrew Holness do a realignment of his parliament in the last few months, as it relates to corruption. Education Minister Ruel Reid resigned in March 2019. That was 8 months after Andrew Weekly stepped down as Energy Minister over the Petrojam scandal. And then most recently, we saw the award of contracts allegedly, I would say, by the Ministry of Health and Wellness to Public Relations, this agency, Market Me Consulting Limited. And then, this must definitely have been a blow to the campaign, because a lot of this would have come out as it relates to the health minister within the last week or last 2 weeks. Are Jamaicans concerned about these allegations, and are they satisfied that Prime Minister Andrew Holness has sort of managed these issues or these allegations in the way that they would have liked to see it?
Everything in life is relative, including corruption in politics. So the question is not how corrupt this government is how does it compare to the previous government in corruptness. It might be corrupt and less corrupt than before. And one of the differences is that Andrew Holness has acted. When people have been under fire, he has acted, removing them when necessary. Previously, the previous administration, you hear all these accusations and nothing happened. You mentioned Mr. Wheatley. He was here Yes, 8 months before he resigned. Well, his counterpart, Philip Paul, the former energy minister, he has been embroiled many, many, many times. His name has been called. He has never resigned. He's the campaign director for the PNP. And all the polls show when they ask him, yeah, people feel both parties are corrupt. But who is more corrupt? It's the opposition. Because Andrew Holness has acted, maybe not as much as technically he should, but at least he seemed to be doing something. Previously, we haven't seen much movement. And Dr. Tufton's case with the market me and the consultants is an interesting one because polls taken after it came out show his ratings had actually gone up.
Oh, that's quite interesting. I wasn't expecting to hear that.
Yes, apparently, if there's corruption and the lady is involved and she's been taken care of, maybe some people feel it. What's wrong with that? That's the conclusion where people are a little puzzled, but the facts are there. So, you know.
Jamaicans, we've spoken earlier about, tourism and being a tourism dependent nation. Are we seeing any sort of different sort of activity taking place in the country for people to make money in terms of like entrepreneurship? Are people becoming creative in that way? What's happening on the ground right now?
Yeah, forever they keep talking about diversification. We keep talking about it. But the problem is Jamaica has what I would call an apartheid education system. In terms of, we have some decent schools up there. In Jamaica, they call it uptown and downtown because of geography, where uptown is higher altitude-wise, they go down toward the poorer people as you go down towards the sea. And so we have some schools, okay, I'll give you a statistic. In terms of passes, 5 CSEC, Caribbean Secondary Education Council exams, 161 schools. The top 10, for passing 5 subjects, average 90-something% for passing 5 subjects. The bottom 10 average less than 2%. There's a huge gap. It's a class and culture gap. And I call it an apartheid education system because I look at it and I say the resources available to a student who is up there, uptown, in the Cherry Garden is one of the rich areas, and you have a poor area called Majestic Gardens. The difference, the disparity in resources is no less than the disparity when in South Africa between the whites and the blacks. That's perhaps Jamaica's most intractable problem. The crime feeds a lot into that. But to get the feed and that, the parties don't even know where to start. We've heard the government start with daycare and early childhood education, which is where people feel the solutions will be. You start getting them equal from their young. But that's a generational change. And often politicians, listen, if I invest in this in 20 years, it works. Where's my glory? They want short-term glory. And that's been one of the problems with Jamaica. To its credit, we've seen some start from the government, but hey, politicians do not, talk nice, we're doing this. Will they follow through for the long term? Because as a Jamaican living here, and most countries, if you look around the world, countries that are doing well, the famous Scandinavian countries, right? That always do well on life quality indexes. It starts with equality of education, equal opportunity education to all. And until that happens, we in Jamaica, probably Trinidad also, or poor maybe Ecuador also, will always struggle to get that equality in the system till we get equal access to education on the ground. As I said, there's been talk about by this government that give them credit. Will they follow through? Let us see.
One of Jamaica's biggest sells, I would say, is its culture. I mean, the music, the food, everything, the language, the accent, it's all gone global. With that said, are any of these main political parties showing signs that the creative industry will receive the assistance needed during this time?
Yes, for sure. I like to say Jamaica is the world's youngest and smallest world cultural superpower. That's how I like to describe us. No country is so
little, but we Talawa, right?
No country this young or so small has had a global impact. And you talk, yes, and they're very aware of it. And in fact, that is one of the things with this COVID. During emancipation holidays, that is exactly what happened. All the entertainers, the culture people start bawling, free us up, we need to have fun. We want to go out and dance and thing, right? And the government, the health people said, no, lock it down. But the government in their wisdom said, listen, we've got to keep the people happy also. But our culture minister is very versed. In fact, our culture minister, Olivia Babs the Great, she used to manage artists like Shabba Ranks and Bounty Killer, the big dance hall stars. So she is intimately acquainted with the culture. And that's one of our strengths, that we understand it. That's what makes Jamaica special. Without our culture, we're just another small, insignificant island. And Trinidad would understand it through their carnival. So yes, there's been a lot of attention paid by both sides to the culture. And as I said, the culture minister, she understands the culture better than anybody from the inside and the outside, having managed artists and also gone to the UN and from the outside, the culture and the political side. Yeah.
When this election is over, is it likely that Jamaica will go into a lockdown once again? What can we expect?
Most people feel yes. The numbers, as I say, that we've had more infections in the last week than the previous 5 months. And we are pretty much on a lockdown now. There's a curfew, 7 o'clock in the Kingston, the metropolitan areas and Spanish Town. And can't even keep up, 9 o'clock now. There is a curfew here. We're on a bit of a lockdown. And we expect tighter controls after the election. And as I say, we don't know what's going to happen with the returning Jamaicans, because the irony is, when we were locked down, people are bawling, let the Jamaicans in, they're Jamaican, they have constitutionally, they let them in, they have been irresponsible. And so, we're going to have to get tighter lockdowns. I don't see how we can avoid it. I mean, it's probably a situation like, say, Trinidad, we might have to go to.
I mean, I can't end the show without mentioning the fact that this election shaped up to be a sort of sound clash. I don't know if it's because of COVID-19.
Yes, exactly. Everybody had dub plates.
Dancehall throughout the season. And I definitely want to end with my favorite from Lisa Hanna. Spice had contributed that song, that campaign song. So we'll end on that note. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
With that, we've come to the end of this week's episode of We Caribbean. I am Doris Polo. To keep up with news and more, go to our website, telesurenglish.net, or join us on social media. See you next week.